What's up, Flannelverse? It is week 9, Thursday Night Football. We've got the Ravens at the Dolphins, as usual. Going to be going position by position, starting with quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, defenses, kickers. I'm here with Adam, ShipMyMoney, Scherer to talk through the slate. Adam, how are we doing today? How's NBA going for you?
Doing pretty well. Basketball's going well. I've had some close calls in the bigger contests, but won the $4.20 max the other day, which a lot of times I don't even bother like registering and playing because it's just like it feels so difficult to win. Like for some reason, it feels harder to win that than it does to win like the $15 lotto. I don't really know why it feels that way, but since usually I'm not playing 150 in the lotto anyway, but actually decided to register it one night and won it. So I'll keep adding that one to the mix, I guess. But haven't won 2 tournaments yet, like you have.
Yeah, I'm getting the mini max. It's I can't tell if it's like a secondary mini max that I'm winning, but I'm winning. It's just like 5,000 entries in it. Had 80 entries in it last night. Have taken it down both Wednesday night so far. So NBA going well. Just mega lucky run out last week, and also mega lucky in that both weeks it would have won less money in every other tournament I was in. So just happened to be like the right lineup in the right tournament.
That's always the best. I said the same thing to you when I won the $4. Like, obviously, the first thing I did was look, because I had played the $15 as well, was look and be like, damn, did I just, cost myself 100K on just randomly picking the wrong lineup? But it would have gotten like 10th for 1,000 instead of first for 6,000. So I was like, okay, cool.
Exactly. That's the dream right there. Unlike when you would have won the Millie Maker, but instead got second in the Spy or Slam, whatever it is. Yeah. All right.
That was a tough beat for like everybody because it's kept me in the industry for an extra 5 years too.
That's true. Yeah, you would have been just out completely. But you probably would have. You'd have a lot more volume in DFS, is my guess.
My guess is I would have left the industry for like 3 months, blown through 800K on
hookers and blow,
girls, shoes, and DFS entries, and then been right back.
Yeah, that's probably true actually. But you would have been back in the industry too because you would have spent all your money. So
exactly.
All right, we are going to talk about quarterbacks. One thing that I'm curious if people have thoughts on. I don't know what to make of all of the like returning players from injury for Baltimore. I think I'm going to have to continue to research that this afternoon because as of right now, do not have a great feel for what this defense looks like currently after they were out like all of their defensive players for a while. They're still out there. There's at least one who's out. I'm forgetting who it is out for the season at this point, but
my neighbor.
Oh, he's the one who lives in your building,
or did
that's cool.
I haven't seen the Ferrari that I've always assumed was his in a while.
Yeah, which and a great player, obviously pretty impactful, but like they were out like half their defense for a little while. That's going to impact all of the like defensive metrics that we look at here. They've obviously improved, but I think still not like the stout Ravens defense of past years. But we'll talk about it to the extent we can. Starting with quarterbacks though, Lamar Jackson is back. Thank God. Our national nightmare is over. He's 11,800 on the slate projected for. So I'm using 53% flex ownership, 30% captain ownership are the numbers at Run the Sims. I'm getting under the field on both, which I hate to see. I'm getting 48% in the flex, 11% in captain. Are you using the same ownership numbers, and how much Lamar are you getting?
Yeah, using the same ownership numbers and same page, 49% flex, 11% captain. Obviously would like to get more. I was kind of mentioning it to you before the show, and I guess may as well just touch on it now. Obviously, we'll talk about it more later, but I am interested in the status of Keaton Mitchell today, and I think it affects Lamar to some extent. If, like, obviously with Lamar coming back from injury, you don't know exactly how it's going to affect his rushing opportunities. Like clearly you're expecting him to run, but a matter of, is he running 8-9 times? Is he running 5-6 times? Like obviously that matters. If Keaton Mitchell is active, I do think that is a potential reason to dock Lamar a little bit because Mitchell hasn't been active in a game with Lamar yet this year for the obvious reason. And Harbaugh stated it that when you have Lamar and you have Henry, there's just no need to generate touches for Keaton Mitchell. So I would pay attention to that. I did personally right now on the site. He's kind of projected. Keaton Mitchell's projected like halfway. That's mainly like a logistical thing. But when I ran my stuff, I went ahead and projected it as if Mitchell were out. And I'm still not getting that much Lamar, which I certainly don't like. I would be happy getting more later. But at the same time, like he is really expensive and everybody's going to want to play him. Like, he's really expensive. He's really popular. Like, it's, you can see like why you would consider not playing him. And he's not I don't think he's the cheat code that he used to be in Showdown either, since he has Derrick Henry. Like, you
Yeah.
do have this other expensive guy in your backfield that does have a ton of rushing touchdown equity. You know, you had for years, it was just like, if you're not playing Lamar at captain in Showdown, you're just punting money, kind of like screw the dupes. Like, you can't win if you don't have Lamar captain. Like, it's not like that anymore, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I think that is a good point. Like and he also, like, Zay Flowers could outscore him.
Yeah.
Like, there are multiple players that could outscore him. For a while, I was like, yeah, Lamar is just going to be the highest scoring player on his team, and most slates it looked like he was going to be the highest scoring player on the slate. Yeah, it's a little bit different now. I think that's a good note on Keaton Mitchell affecting Lamar also. Like, it's possible that Keaton Mitchell, like you said, is inactive for this game because Lamar is back. But yeah, you're right. Maybe if he is active, that would be an indication that they're not going to give Lamar as much rushing work as he normally would get. For the record, for anybody, we say what we're getting right now. This is just based on, I opened up the app using the inputs that are in Run the Sims and ran the Sims to see what will come out. Naturally, if you use the numbers that are right now, obviously, so this is the what I'm getting doesn't reflect like any of my stances right now. It's just like using the raw data that is in there right now. When you run the Sims, this is what you get for large field tournaments for my settings here. And Adam,
Yeah,
same
and still working on, dialing in projections and all of that. This is a very first look for me as well.
Yeah, exactly. And Lamar Jackson, you don't need to stack him up anywhere in your lineup, I would think. You obviously can stack him up. I think it's still like most of the time when I have him at captain, I'm going to have him stacked up, partially because you want to stack, partially just because you're going to want a pass catcher from Baltimore in a lot of your lineups, I would think. How much are you getting to unstack Lamar?
It doesn't really look like I'm getting too much, if any, unstacked at captain. Because again, like you said, I mean, it's still, I so rarely get like unstacked captains, even if they are guys that run, just because it's a showdown slate. Like, I don't need like a 4-2 Miami stack with my Lamar captain or anything, I don't think.
Right.
Obviously, I guess it lowers dupe risk and all of that, but still, most of my Lamar captain lineups have somebody. Obviously, I think you can play him and Henry together. That's something that gets talked about a lot on classic slates. That typically it's not my favorite thing to do, because, like, yes, they both can have good games, but generally they don't both exceed their salary. But then on a showdown slate, like, that's less of a concern, because there's a lot of ways that you just need the raw points. So, like, obviously you can play them together. I think that, if you want to go with like the idea that the Ravens, for one reason or another, have to throw a bit more, like mixing in Justice Hill, who I don't think we've seen a good game from in a while, but still has that third down role, pass catching role, if somehow they're losing to the Dolphins or something. Pairing him with Lamar, makes some sense. But yeah, still stacking Lamar, even though obviously you don't have to.
Yeah, just to your point about playing them together, because this is something that I think is always interesting to look at for the Ravens, even more so than other teams. Just like looking at the correlation. This is just literally PPR fantasy points scored last year, and you can see Lamar, Derrick Henry, Justice Hill are the top three roles here. You can kind of see the correlations, but there are plenty of games where both Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry did well. Looks at week 3, 26 for Lamar, 30 for Derrick Henry. Week 4, 25 for Lamar, 36 for Derrick Henry. You have several games throughout the year that it's like one of them scores 30 to 35, the other one scores mid 20s. You probably want both of them if they hit these scores in Showdown. Not necessarily. I mean, there are several that, like, if Lamar gets 23.6, Derrick Henry gets 26.3, do you want Lamar? I don't know, but like, you can see that they, although maybe they're slightly negatively correlated, I don't even know if that is the case looking at this, but they like certainly can hit together, and did several times last year. So if you're thinking about setting a rule like no Lamar with Derrick Henry, I would not set that rule.
No.
They can definitely hit together.
Yeah, they're not negatively correlated in the sense that, like, if one does well, the other one's going to score 5.
Right.
Their top end, you can get into trouble, and that's where, like, one of my favorite things is seeing people talk about this in DFS, and kind of like being able to see very quickly how they think about DFS. Like, a year or two ago, I remember somebody thinking they were making the point that, like, it's actually good to play them together by pointing out how often they both score 20 points. And it's like, okay, well, Lamar scoring 20 points is like 4 points lower than his projection. So you're not actually making the case that you're trying to make. But in Showdown, like, if they both score 20 points, probably want them both. Good chance you want them both.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Showdown, it works out pretty well. I mean, they had some games where it's like that, like maybe that would have worked out on a main slate, but like
Yeah, like there's the
not
occasional
that
like
many.
you get a shootout where Lamar has one or two rushing touchdowns, Henry has two, the defense gives up a ton. Like that obviously can happen, but so much of Lamar, like obviously he's a good passer, he gets production in the passing game, but so much of his projection and upside is made up from rushing touchdown equity
Right.
that you need a specific game for both Henry and Lamar to go for, 30, 35 plus.
Yeah, exactly. Which again, like you
And
said,
Henry doesn't catch passes either.
yeah, right. Which you don't need on, you don't need 30 plus on Showdown. But yeah, for main slates, not quite as good there. On the other side, Tua Tagovailoa 10,000 projected for. I mean, this is project for 29% flex ownership, 4% cap ownership. Adam, I just finished writing up who's the player that you expect to be most underweight on the field on, and Tua Tagovailoa was my answer to that question. And I see in my first run of the Sims, I am way over the field, 71% Tua in the flex, 7% at captain. I hate to see it. Are you getting similar numbers for Tua Tagovailoa right now?
Yeah, but I also think projections on Miami are coming in a little hot right now. So this is one where like I'm not sure that I will get less, but I certainly would kind of like to because you're not getting any rushing upside there. He's not super expensive, but he's not really cheap either. And there are obviously a lot of guys that I want to pay for on this slate. You have, a healthier secondary now for Baltimore, as you were alluding to at the top of the show. Kyle Hamilton being healthy is super important for this defense. So I don't really like Tua here. At the same time, he is a quarterback. He looked like he remembered how to play football last week. I don't know if that carries over. But I think in general, just as I was kind of taking a look through the actual projections for Miami, I think the passing game in general is just coming in like a little bit hot right now. So I haven't looked at like my wide receiver exposures, but I'm probably higher than I'll end up on like Waddle and everything too, I would guess.
Right.
But and it's not by like a crazy amount. So I guess that's what I'm getting at is like it's not like right now Tua is projected for 300 yards and he's going to lose 80 yards by lock. He's projected like 15 yards above his passing prop. So it's not like a crazy amount. But he probably does come down a little bit, at least between now and lock. The ownership number, I think, is the one that is interesting and really probably driving it. Like if you're gonna have a 29% owned quarterback, yeah, I know he doesn't run, but
Yeah.
you're gonna have a 29 if you assume that number is right, and clearly it can change between now and lock. And you're going to have a 29% owned quarterback that, yeah, he's relatively expensive at 10K, but he's still the fifth most expensive player on the slate.
Right. Yeah, it's it does get tough. If he comes in at that ownership, then suddenly I'm gonna like him a lot better. He
It,
was other place I was looking did have him significantly higher. Again, that's
yeah,
I usually start my research elsewhere, and so I form my opinions using Tua as like the third highest owned player on the slate, and here he's coming in much lower. So then you're gonna get a lot more in that case.
it's also a very weird slate in terms of the players on it. And kind of the fact that that a quarterback is the fifth most expensive player on the slate kind of speaks to it. There's really like no mid range. You have Bateman at 6,400, but like Zay Flowers is 9,400. So you have these six guys 9,400 or higher, where Tua is the fifth most expensive of the six. Flowers is the only one cheaper. Then you get this massive gap where like you can't roster 8K guys. They don't exist. You can't roster 7K guys. They don't exist.
Yeah,
So you do also probably just sort of run into sort of almost like a funnel where like, well, I can't quite afford Achan or Waddle or Henry or whoever, but Tua projects clearly better than a kicker. So I'm going to just land on Tua. So I do think it's a spot maybe where in like large field tournaments too, you could look to like Tua specifically as a spot where maybe you build a lineup and then, let's say you use 49-8, you just turn Tua into a kicker or something. And, you're leaving 4K on the table, but he's certainly live to lose to a kicker. That's a spot where I think it just makes for like an interesting, a lot of times when you look at lineups that do well, and are relatively low duped, it's like a lineup that it almost looks like it was made by hand, where like somebody built a lineup that projects really well and then just specifically turned one player into somebody a lot cheaper that could realistically outscore them. I think that kind of sets up on the slate with Tua specifically. Like, not to say that, a kicker, defense, whatever, can't outscore Zay Flowers or Derrick Henry or whoever, but like those guys are a lot less likely, I think, to just have like true dud games where Tua can just go out there. He's not going to run. He can just go out there and score 9 points and lose to 2 50-yard field goals.
Counterpoint. What about Bijan Robinson last week? I mean, if Bijan Robinson can put up 8 fantasy points against this Dolphins defense,
Yeah,
I think Derrick Henry is capable of that also. But yeah, no, I agree with your point of like, yeah, oftentimes you can just 1v1 to somebody that's like, a 30 to 70 dog to outscore the player who's like $2,000 more expensive. I don't know what the odds of a kicker outscoring Tua actually is. That'd be a fun thing to look into. I probably about that, or maybe 20% likelihood of outscoring Tua.
Yeah, probably around there. Like right now, the sim projection on Tua is 17.5. It'll probably be like 16 or something by lock, I would guess. The kicker projection for really like 7 or 8 points. But like with the way kicker scoring works too, it's not like it's really in 1 point increments.
No.
So yeah, it's probably something like 70-30 or something into his favor.
Yeah. I mean, it is sometimes in 1 point increments. It's either 1 or I guess 3, 4, 5. But anyway,
yeah.
No, I'm joking.
I'm actually, and also just kind of thinking back to the Tua ownership thing. Like, it seems low in the sense that again, he's a quarterback and he's the fifth most expensive guy on the slate. But also, like what I was just saying, like it's gonna be so hard for people. There's this whole range of like builds, I think, where you can afford Tua, you can't afford anything better, and you're sacrificing 6 points of median projection to go to anything cheaper. It's going to be really difficult for like optimizers and sims to say like, yeah, sacrifice 6 points.
Right.
So I don't know. I feel like you just get higher ownership here, which would bring down obviously how much I'd get to.
Yeah. And I, again, like looking at other places, let me see if I still have it open because I'm curious what RG has it at. So I'll just pull it up on my screen and see what their ownership number is. Because I'm curious how far off it is. Because I guess in my mind they had them a lot higher, but I'm not actually sure if that's true. Let's see. They have met. They have Tua at 53% flex ownership.
That makes a lot more sense to me.
And only 1.5% captain ownership though. So my guess is if you put those numbers in, you're just going to get to a ton of Tua at captain, a lot less at flex. That's interesting. But yeah, 53% flex ownership, over 50% overall seems more likely. But
yeah, and for what it's worth, and again, I think the projection on him right now is a little bit elevated, nothing too crazy, but he came out with like a 42% optimal rate at flex and like 6% at captain. So like, again, if you tell me he's only going to be 29% owned with a 42% chance of being optimal, like, yeah, he's going to show up a lot at flex. But also, and this is something that we do factor in when we push our final ownership update, the field plays well. Like if a player is projected to be optimal around 40% of the time, more often than not, he's going to be rostered around 40% of the time, if not more.
Yeah, that's a fair point. So likely the ownership comes up and then we'll get a little bit less. I assume with Tua, you're always stacking regardless of where he is in the lineup, and often most of the time multi-stacking when he is at quarterback, and obviously HN counts as a pass catcher for that stack.
Yeah, if I just sort by like my top ranked Tua captain lineups, 3 pass catchers, including D. Eskridge, who barely counts, but 3 pass catchers, 4 pass catchers, 4 pass catchers, 3 pass catchers. It's very, very difficult for Tua to be the winning captain in any way that does not involve multiple passing touchdowns to multiple different people.
Apparently, I need to look more into D. Eskridge because I am getting a ton, it looks like, in this first run of the Sims.
I'm guessing it's like an ownership. That's another, I mentioned the Keaton Mitchell spot as far as just wait for inactives and kind of see. This is one too. D. Eskridge was out last week. Cedric Wilson ran like 30% of routes. I don't know if D. Eskridge being back means Cedric Wilson ends up being inactive. I don't know if they both are out there running routes. So I kind of assume that Cedric Wilson ends up being inactive. But right now I have like some routes going to both.
It looks like D. Eskridge was at least active, just didn't run any routes.
No,
from what Oh, it was? Okay, he's showing up. Interesting. Okay, just looking at the route share report, he shows up as 0.0 rather than like a dash, which usually means inactive, or it means that he was active. But I guess I'll have to look into that more. That could just be an error.
Like I googled it last night. If their AI, if they were lying. Like if Google was wrong, then I'm wrong.
Yeah, just like
because I was trying to find it last night too.
Like this would look like he was in. Julian Hill was actually
Right.
inactive. Would be the way my takeaway here, but yeah, this could just be wrong. We'll have to look at that again, I guess. All right, let's move on to running backs. We can start with. Hang on one second. I guess we can start wherever we want. Let's see. The Ravens are the away team, so we can start with Derrick Henry.
No, never mind. He wasn't. He doesn't look like he was on the injury report last week. So
okay,
Google is making shit up.
Nice. Okay, so we did play, and just didn't run any routes, which is probably like we don't need to like change things for it. Then Cedric Wilson looks legit,
unless Eskridge got hurt in game.
Yeah, that could have happened also. I'm glad I don't do projections, so I don't have to like figure out exactly how to distribute things for this. That must.
So
suck.
now it's if I Google D. Eskridge injury, it says D. Eskridge suffered a shoulder injury during a game against the Falcons and is listed as questionable. He was carted off the field and ruled out for the remainder of the game, but has since increased his practice participation. Injured in the first half against the Falcons and did not return.
Okay, so he was injured in that game last week, so that does affect. Like we can't read too much into the 0 routes run because it probably was just due to the injury.
Right. But like that does suggest that him and Wilson would both be active.
Right. Which is messy. Yeah.
Probably. Right.
All right. That's a good note. Well, we'll cover that when we get to receivers. A lot of good running backs on this slate. I mean, particularly at the top, we've got Devin Achane and Derrick Henry. Starting with Derrick Henry, 11,000 project for 33% flex ownership, 12% captain ownership. Using those numbers, I got to 28% flex, 9% captain. So a little bit underweight on Derrick Henry. Again, this is not where I want to be, where I'm getting to a ton of Tua Tagovailoa and less of Derrick Henry. But that's currently what I'm getting with the Sims using these ownership numbers. How much are you getting to of Derrick Henry?
I'm even with the field. I have 34 flex. I have 11 captain. It's a good spot. Obviously, he's Derrick Henry. Lamar being back is not ideal for him. Like you're going to lose some of the rushing market share just because Lamar is going to run certainly more than Cooper Rush, and then generally probably a little bit more than Huntley, or at least designed. They're going to be more willing to put the ball in Lamar's hands than Huntley's hands over Derrick Henry.
Right.
But still, clearly massive ceiling. You mentioned Bijan earlier. Like, don't let that distract you from the fact that Miami sucks. So Derrick Henry does look good. The only knock is the usual knock on Derrick Henry, and it's that he doesn't catch passes. The off chance that this turns into a game where Baltimore is playing from behind, that would be bad for Henry, obviously, and good for Justice Hill from a role standpoint. But even if we do assume this is a neutral game or a game where the Ravens are playing from ahead, like you do need that 100 yards and a touchdown plus game from Henry generally.
Right. Since I didn't read it off when we were doing quarterbacks, I just want to read off the stats. The Ravens in Lamar Jackson starts ranked 5th in terms of pass rate over expectations. They actually pass quite a bit when Lamar is healthy. Dolphins defense has allowed the 14th fewest schedule adjusted fantasy points per game over the last 5 weeks. So basically neutral defense over the past 5 weeks. And then for Tua Tagovailoa, Dolphins rank 21st in terms of pass rate over expectations. Ravens defense has allowed the 10th most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to quarterbacks over the past 5 weeks. That does include at least one game where like the entire defense was hurt, so that might have affected that number a bit. But that is where we're at over the past 5 weeks. And then in terms of, go ahead.
I'll say I just wanted to mention the pass rate over expectation with Lamar. Keep in mind that in one of the 4 games Lamar played is when they gave up like 70 plays to the Bills.
True.
And
so they were just throwing the whole game.
Yeah.
So that will affect that number for sure. Derrick Henry, Dolphins defense has allowed the 12th most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to running backs over the past 5 weeks, even with that dud from Bijan. So it's a pretty strong matchup for Derrick Henry here against Miami. And then on the other side, Devin Achane and the Dolphins, when we get their Ravens defense, allowed the 10th most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to running backs over the past 5 weeks. Again, that includes one game where the entire defense was hurt, and we don't know exactly how much we want to read into that. But those are the numbers we're working with here.
I think actually was week 1 Ravens Bills.
Yes, I think so.
So that's actually the only Lamar game that they were not over in pass.
They were negative, Pat. That's right. That's right. Yeah. So which is pretty strange. But they had the big lead, right? And the Bills came back.
Oh, right. That's what it was. Yeah, the Bills came back.
Yeah. So that kind of makes sense.
I just remembered it from the plays standpoint.
Yeah. Weird one. All right.
That is also something like thinking about like how depending how much you think their defense is going to be improved, et cetera, like that has an impact also.
Right. True. So running backs, Derrick Henry. How much do you say you're getting relative to these? I'm getting with 33% flex ownership, 12% captain ownership. How much do you say you're ending up with?
34 and 11.
Okay, so you're not far off from the field.
Yeah.
And then you are, so in the sims that you ran, did you make Keaton Mitchell inactive or active there?
I ran Keaton Mitchell with 0, so it gave I think like an extra carry maybe to Justice Hill.
Okay. And this is I'm using 3% flex ownership. I didn't get to any Keaton Mitchell. Justice Hill, 3,600 projected for 24% flex ownership, 1% captain ownership. Using those numbers, I was right with the field. 25% flex, 1% captain. Any different for you?
Yeah, a little bit higher at flex. I have 33%. That probably is just because of whatever change I made to lower Keaton Mitchell. I think again I gave like an extra carry to Hill. If you go and look at, and obviously it's not perfect because they were throwing pretty heavily in at least 3 of these 4 games. But if you go back and look at the games where Keaton Mitchell was inactive and you had Lamar, 7, 14, 0, and 18% rushing market shares for Justice Hill. So still all over the place, but you do get a little bit more rushing potential. If Keaton Mitchell's out, obviously that's not like really why you're rostering Justice Hill, but he does look marginally better if Keaton Mitchell's out.
Okay, yeah, and that was the first 5 weeks of the year. We had no Keaton Mitchell. If I'm or wait, 4 weeks
First
of the
4
year.
weeks.
Yeah, because they had their bye already in week 7. Yeah, so we can look at how the numbers break down over the weeks without Keaton Mitchell, Justice Hill. I mean, 8 carries in those games, but 15 targets, so just under 4 targets per game, 45% route participation. Again, if we look at the like fantasy points from last year, and now I'm just looking at Justice Hill, but like it was kind of scattered all over the place, but like he did have several. Like he had 5 games in double digits, 11.5, 21.6 in week 4, 13.8, 14.2, 17.8. So he had 5 weeks in the regular season in double digit fantasy points. A couple of them look really good, over 17 fantasy points. So certainly capable of putting up big scores. Yeah, looks like a pretty strong play on a slate that is devoid of value plays. Any other notes on running backs for the Ravens?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's driving a lot of it with Hill too. There's just not like a lot of cheap guys. It's not from like a line standpoint. It's not your typical Justice Hill game. Like they're 7.5 point road favorites. That's better than if they were 10.5 point home favorites, I guess. But he's still his receptions prop is like 2.5. So he's projected around 2-3 receptions. So mostly, I think it's just that like once you get past that top tier of guys, I don't love Justice Hill here, but who exactly do you love in that cheap range? Like you can make pro and con arguments for a lot of people.
Also, like getting back to correlation points, people not wanting to play Jackson with Henry. I'm guessing even more people will be opposed to Henry with Hill because they work out in different game scripts. So you can see here, week 4, 35.9. This is last year, 35.9 for Derrick Henry, 21.6 for Justice Hill. So Justice Hill's best game was also a smash game for Derrick Henry. Week 7, you probably like both of these scores, 25.2 for Henry, 13.8 for Justice Hill. This one did not work out for Henry, and Justice Hill benefited, but looks like there's at least like they're negatively correlated, but they can hit together. Were you getting into much of Henry and Hill in the same lineup?
I'm not sure. I'll check, but yeah, like I think it's kind of like the perfect example of the difference between Showdown and a classic slate. Like obviously you would never play like any 2 running backs together in a classic slate, but it's actually kind of good in a Showdown slate that Hill and Henry have, like you said, they benefit from different game scripts, which they do, but they also do completely different things. So it's not like I don't have a great example off the top of my head, but like Justice Hill can have a good enough for the optimal DFS lineup game by catching 4 passes for 40 yards. And that has literally nothing to do with Derrick Henry. He can do that simply by being on the field on third down in his normal role. Like Justice Hill can score 7-8 fantasy points and in some cases be optimal without having any sort of negative effect whatsoever on Derrick Henry. And the only real, like, yeah, if Derrick Henry runs for 3 touchdowns in the first quarter, then yeah, you're probably just like never going to see Justice Hill, period. But assuming it's like a relatively competitive game, Justice Hill can play his normal game, not have any negative impact whatsoever on Derrick Henry. And then as the game goes on, the Ravens lead gets bigger. Derrick Henry just runs and runs and runs, and both guys get there. As far as lineups where I have them both together, I definitely see at least one showing up or 2. I actually have a Henry captain with Justice Hill, which I think is fine.
Yeah, I pulled up my lineup set here, and I have several. You can see my 52nd overall lineup here gets Derrick Henry captain with Justice Hill. Got another one down here, Derrick Henry, Justice Hill, and then but I also have some others that have both of them in the flex. This one, Mark Andrews captain with Derrick Henry and Justice Hill. So it looks like I'm getting. It's not like super common, but I'm getting it. Within my top 150 lineups. Like it's not a super rare thing either. Like it's not something.
And it's one of those things where like, yeah, it's not your super logical, like this game, this lineup tells a story that is perfect. Right. But whenever you're in that situation, like the further away from that perfect logical story, the lower your dupes are going to be too. Not saying that like nobody plays Hill and Henry together, because obviously they do, but you can expect, but basically, like if Justice Hill were the same price, same projection, and a wide receiver, he would be paired with Derrick Henry more than he's going to be.
Yeah. And I mean, to your point, like it doesn't even need to be like Hill comes in there in a negative game stretch. It can be like the Ravens get the ball with 1:40 left in the first half, and he can put up 7 fantasy points without scoring a touchdown just because Lamar dumps it down to him multiple times for like 20-yard gains or whatever. Yeah. like people,
Or he scores a touchdown on the 2-minute drive, and even that isn't really cutting into Derrick Henry because Derrick Henry doesn't play 2-minute drives.
Right, that's just not part of his role. Yeah, good point. Somebody asked Keaton Mitchell's projected ownership. I believe it was 3%. Yeah, 3%.
Obviously, if he's inactive, it'll be 0%. It's kind of annoying. Like I was thinking about the Keaton Mitchell thing earlier. Like it's nice from a projection standpoint, not really having to worry about it. That we'll find out 90 minutes before lock. But it would be kind of fun if like they just weren't going to tell you if it was basketball, and like they're just not going to tell you what they're doing, and you could be like, oh well, 5 to 10% of the field is going to play Keaton Mitchell because he had a big role last week, and I don't think he even steps on the field.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. On the other side, Devin Achane, 11,400 projected for 35% flex, 24% captain. So project for more ownership than Derrick Henry in both spots and more expensive. And I'm getting to a lot more of Devin Achane, 56% flex, 12% captain. So even with higher projected ownership, higher price tag, you're still getting to a lot more Devin Achane, which I assume is mostly just that pass catching role that he has and Derrick Henry doesn't have, raises the floor, raises the ceiling significantly. Are you also getting to a lot of Devin Achane?
Yeah, it's a spot that I want to look at a little bit more because I think that the gap between him and Henry in projection is probably a little bit bigger than it should be. But at the same time, the pass catching role is just huge in full PPR. And a big negative potentially for Achane, or a negative given the way he scores fantasy points, it's not that big, I guess. But last week we did have Miami say that they wanted to use Jalen Wright, and they did. I don't think they're going to use Jalen Wright nearly to the extent this week that they did last week. A lot of Jalen Wright's carries were in the fourth quarter in garbage time. But the way that they did use Jalen Wright, it wasn't, a massive amount of usage, but it also was not like he replaced Ollie Gordon. It was they just added a third guy to the backfield. So I do think that the rushing market share for Devin for Achane comes down some this week. But again, that's not really where his money is made anyway. They're throwing him the ball on short passes, high catch rate, good after the catch, makes big plays in the passing game, really good receiver. So like it's not a huge deal, but he would project a little bit better if they were gonna not play Jalen Wright again. But the passing game work for Achane just makes him so valuable. And also, I wanted to mention it. Swokowski said Hill scoring a touchdown even helps Henry. Yeah, I was kind of trying to get to that, and I didn't articulate it well. But that, like, the order of the touchdown scoring, you could actually argue like the game script does make sense. If Justice Hill happens to score on the first drive, that's good for the Derrick Henry game script.
Right. True. Yeah. Whereas if Derrick Henry scores early and often, that's bad for Justice Hill. Yeah. In theory, at least.
The main takeaway is in a single game slate, a lot of weird shit happens, and
exactly, yeah.
You don't want to be like so, unless you're playing like one lineup or something. You don't want to be like so strict where you're ruling out things that are pretty likely to happen.
Yeah, which is, I mean, we've talked about it before, but it's like most lineups that are just like you set like very minimal correlation rules. Like it's tough to see to a captain without any pass catchers like that. Just like it's tough to tell that story. It's possible you can tell that story, but it's like a thinner one. But like I feel like most lineups you make that are not just like horribly correlated, it's not that difficult to tell a story of like how this lineup gets there. Like, and I think people always talk about like you got to tell a story with your lineup and stuff, and it's like that's not really wrong, but like also every lineup can tell a story. I think like I can with most of my lineups as long as they're not horribly correlated.
Yeah, and the story needs to make more sense the more options you have. As opportunity cost goes down, your story can make less sense. And on a showdown slate, there's not much opportunity cost.
Yeah. Are you getting to any Jalen Wright, Ollie Gordon, any other Dolphins running backs?
Getting to a little bit. 1% Jalen Wright, 5% Gordon. So not really off market there. Again, I think that Ollie Gordon is the running back too. Like we didn't see Jalen Wright replace him. Somebody in the Around the Sims Discord had already asked about Jalen Wright's market share. So I did want to reiterate, like, obviously it could change this week. Like maybe he jumps Ollie Gordon. I doubt it, but he did get the bulk of his carries in the fourth quarter last week. I don't have it in front of me. It looks like you're in the process of maybe pulling it up. But I think in the first half or first three quarters, it was something like, I don't know, 3 carries for Wright, like 10 for Gordon and 14 for HN or something.
Yeah. So first quarter, let's see. Just one snap for Jalen Wright. Wright had 1 carry, HN 5, Gordon 5 in the first quarter. Second quarter, 2 for HN, 1 for Wright, 2 for Gordon. You're right. Like they were using him even early. Third quarter, 3 for Ollie Gordon, 7 for HN, 1 for Wright. And then fourth quarter, 6 for Wright, 4 for HN, 0 for Gordon. Interesting that they continued using HN a little bit, didn't use Gordon at all there.
Yeah. I didn't look at the order. I assume it's probably like HN was in on the first drive of the fourth quarter, and then
probably
they waved, and then or maybe Ollie Gordon's the starter this week.
Ollie Gordon wheels up. I mean, Mike McDaniel. I think didn't he also say something about Mike McDaniel last week of like about Ollie Gordon? Like we want to split the carries. I feel like there was positive coach speak on both Gordon and Jalen Wright, which is hilarious for a coach that's just grasping to save his job at this point.
Yeah. But I mean, I think if you go with like if this were preseason, you have people arguing that HN's not even going to make the team now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that is true. That would be the argument. Here, I'll just read off a quote. The most recent quote on the 28th. Offense coordinator Frank Smith, on using all 3 running backs early against the Falcons, said, "That allows us to get our guys in the rhythm of the game and be able to use their skill sets for what we wanted to accomplish. When you're getting your guys in the game early, that allows them to get in the rhythm and feel and all the emotion of the game. I think that's not just limited to the running backs. We're trying to get as many guys in as we can just to give the defense different presentations and looks to see what their response is." Interesting. So they're very much trying to get also on the 20th, head coach Mike McDaniel on what went into the running backs rotating through early in the game and whether that is something we could see going forward. He said, "Try to give guys opportunities, and sometimes the game allows for further opportunities. We have a lot of talent there to utilize. You try to give them opportunities early. You kind of have an idea of how you think it's going to go, but you keep an open mind to how people respond. I think Ollie Gordon probably had the most carries he's had this season. I think it was easy for that to occur based upon his opportunities early. Getting everybody involved is important. Giving them the opportunity to take more of a share, depending on how guys are playing, is important." So it sounds like they like very intentionally are trying to use all 3 early and then just like hot hand based on how they're doing. That's so gross. I don't know.
Yeah. And I mean, the main thing for me is like Miami actually looked like a functional football team. So I assume they're not going to change
that. Yeah, it's a good point. They actually beat a really good Falcons defense. Yeah, I mean, so maybe that continues. I had not realized how much Jalen Wright played last week. If we don't split it up by quarter, what does it look like? What was the overall workload?
Oh, it looks like a really big split if you don't actually break it up by quarter.
Yeah, nine for Wright, 18 for Achane, 10 for Gordon. At least Achane is still the one that's running all the routes. As you said, like he's the one who got 7 targets on 61% route participation.
Yeah, so it was. So I mean, like that actually, he did have his second lowest route participation of the season, but again, I think that had to do with the score also.
I also benefit to Ollie Gordon. Again, he's just like the biggest. Like he's the one that's built for goal line opportunities. So even with Jalen Wright working in as a runner, you'd think it's going to be Ollie Gordon who's still going to get all of the like inside the 5 carries probably.
I don't know about all, but like
not all obviously, but like the more likely to get them, similar to like Kareem Hunt. So
yeah, I've given up on guessing who's getting inside the 5 carries.
That's fair. 4,400, a little bit expensive, tough to really get there. But in my run of the Sims with 7% projected flex ownership, I actually got to 9% Ollie Gordon. With 1% on Jalen Wright, I got to 3%. So a little bit overweight on both.
I think if you're using, I mean, any projections, but if you're using Run the Sims, I do think this is a spot where you can kind of tinker with market shares without too much concern for like screwing things up. Obviously, like don't project Gordon ahead of Achane or something, but like if you run your lineups and you have 1% Jalen Wright and you want to play 6% because he's 1K and maybe he scores a touchdown, like moving him from whatever he's at, like 10% to 14% and taking 2 off of Achane and 2 off of Gordon, like stuff like that, I think you are perfectly fine to just like, I'm not somebody that likes to kind of work backwards and like force the Sims to give me what my brain thinks. But like in a situation like this, I do think the specific numbers are very fluid. Like the order is Achane, Gordon, Wright. But whether that means 54, 24, 10 or 50, 22, 14, like
right.
Who the fuck knows?
Yeah, exactly. Any other takes on running backs?
No.
All right. And I think, again, you can play at least 2 of these running backs together on the Dolphins, like similar to the Ravens situation. Like there's nothing wrong with playing. I mean, I think there's more negative correlation probably with Achane and Ollie Gordon, because like Ollie Gordon scoring touchdowns probably is taken away from Achane more, but I don't know. I guess it's not that dissimilar from the Ravens.
I actually think it's sort of like the inverse of what you just said, like what you said, but like completely backwards, where I think that Ollie Gordon can have a good game and Achane can still get there relatively easily. I think that if Achane has the like monster game, it's hard for Ollie Gordon because like Gordon can score 2 rushing touchdowns, be optimal at 4,400. Achane has 100 receiving yards and a touchdown.
Right. Yeah, the receiving work makes it easier for them to get there together.
If Achane goes for 100 receiving yards, a receiving touchdown, and 2 rushing touchdowns, like where did Ollie Gordon's production come from?
Yeah, no, I think that is right. Actually, yeah, Achane a little bit easier because he is involved so much in the passing game that he can just PPR his way to PPR and yardage ways to score a lot of points without getting multiple touchdowns. Yeah, that is true. All right, receivers. Starting on the Raven side, Zay Flowers, I mean, was really good with Lamar Jackson early in the season. He's 9,400. Do we believe in the early season production for Zay Flowers? 32% flex, projected ownership, 15% captain. Using those numbers, I did not get to a ton of Zay Flowers. 15% flex, 7% captain. I think all of my like skill players are getting lower ownership than I would like because so much is going to Tua Tagovailoa. Like I would definitely like more here on Zay Flowers. What kind of ownership are you getting on Zay Flowers?
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. It's looking similar for me, like 20 to 25% at flex, 4% at captain. But I think that again, like if or when Tua's projection drops a point, that is just going to marginally make Henry look better. It's going to marginally make Flowers look better. So I do like Zay Flowers a lot here. Like you said, he not only was having good games with Lamar, but extremely involved, very heavily targeted. It's not like he was just ultra efficient on 4 targets or anything like that. And it's just the kind of spot where like you don't want to fall into the trap of just like being lazy thinking about it and basically attributing, Zay Flowers got off to a hot start, but now he's back to normal as like this kind of up and down receiver. Like you played with Cooper Rush and Tyler Huntley. That's going to happen. I think that you can still be very bullish on Zay Flowers when Lamar is healthy without caring at all what happened when Lamar was not healthy.
Yeah, I mean, you can see here, these are the 4 games that Lamar Jackson started, 30 targets for Zay Flowers. So over 7 targets per game, 92% route participation. Was looking like he was kind of taking a step forward. This was, sort of a small sample size, only 4 games, but it seems like you might be just taking this leap forward with Lamar here. So he looks pretty good, and not a bad matchup with the Dolphins. I'm trying to remember what they're in terms of schedule adjusted. I think it's actually, yeah, it's a slight negative matchup over the past 5 games in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed. I believe they actually do have a really strong secondary, so that hurts Zay Flowers a bit. But yeah, they've allowed the 10th fewest schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to wide receivers over the past 5 weeks. But Zay Flowers, I mean, the offense is good enough with Lamar that doesn't concern me all that much. I'm still willing to play a good amount of Zay Flowers, and then
especially when he's relatively inexpensive and can just also like PPR spam his way there.
Yeah, true. It gets tougher beyond Zay Flowers. So DeAndre Hopkins, Rashad Bateman, Hopkins, 4,200 projected for 5% flex ownership. With that number, I got to 22% flex, 1% captain. Bateman, 6,400 projected for 11% flex, none at captain. I got to 5% in the flex, didn't get to any at captain. Then you've got Tez Walker, Tylan Wallace, project for no ownership. I got to none of them. How much interest do you have in, and I'm going to bring up the route share report here on the Ravens. I'm curious what that has looked like for DeAndre Hopkins, because he started off so hot, scoring a lot of touchdowns early. I wonder if he comes back to that, like the way he was playing with Lamar Jackson here. He benefited quite a bit from playing with Lamar early. Also, how much do you get into of Bateman and DeAndre Hopkins?
I'm getting to 22% on Hopkins. I'm only getting like 1 on Bateman. I think for Bateman, it's probably a roster construction thing, where right now I'm just getting more stars and scrubs. Like we mentioned D. Eskridge earlier, like he's $200, so he's showing up in lineups. $800 Cedric Wilson is showing up in lineups. Obviously, I don't love either of those guys. I don't like that I have exposure going there. But I think that like I'm still probably going to prefer the lineups where I get 1 extra of one of those top 6 guys and then just hope that I hit on the right, 1K guy.
Right.
But like Bateman clearly has a high ceiling. Steven said, I think Bateman could be the surprise captain. Like that's the tricky thing with Bateman is like, he'll probably have like the correct amount of ownership to account for the fact that he is like a real player and kind of the only real player in that range. Like, you have him in the tight ends, I guess, on the Ravens. But like he projects far behind the skill players or the top end skill players. But just because of the volatility that there is in the NFL, your median projection can be 7, 8, whatever. You can score that on literally 1 play if you're Rashad Bateman, and then it just completely changes everything. So like the volatility is still there, but it's just right now I'm preferring those kind of stars and scrubs type lineups.
Yeah, and I think same thing is happening for me. I'm not getting too much Bateman there. Actually, wait, was I? Or no, I was getting to a lot of D-Hop, not much Bateman. Just looking through the game logs last year, like if he scores 22, I would think he's could be the winning captain if he scores 22 at his price tag. 23, like he had a couple games last year where he scored enough points to potentially be the captain. Yeah, I think that he'll get lost in the shuffle because hasn't done anything so far this year, and he's a little bit expensive for somebody who hasn't done anything. But sort of interesting, I think, both from a captain. Again, I didn't get to any a captain. I got to 5% in the flex, but I don't hate that just from a if you use a larger sample, like he looked pretty good last year.
I think it's like that prototypical spot where he's a little bit over projected for his median. He's under projected for like what his good game looks like.
Right.
But so it really comes down to like, how does the field handle him? And if this were 4 years ago and everybody was just clicking go on an optimizer and nobody was going to get to Rashad Bateman, then like he becomes really interesting because let's say his efficient ownership is something like, 8, 9, 10%, and he's coming in at 2%, then like, yeah, slam a bunch of Rashad Bateman. But like people are better now with range of outcomes. Like the optimal rate that came out of the sim that I ran before the show on Bateman was 11.7%. He's projected for 11% ownership, 1% captain optimal rate, no captain ownership. But like when you look at that, it goes back to, okay, like, yes, he is low owned in the raw sense of he's only getting 11% ownership, but he's not under owned.
Right. Yeah. He's a fine play. I think I probably want more than 5%, but not that much more. I don't know. I don't have a great take there. What about Hopkins? So he's 4,200 project for 5% ownership. I got more than 4x the field on Hopkins. I guess, wait. Yeah, no, not project for any captain ownership. I got to 1% at captain. Also, are you also getting a ton of Hopkins in your sims?
24% at flex, which probably just has to do with the ownership and the fact he's 4,200. He's running routes like 45% of the time. Obviously, he's not going to be super highly targeted. He's not a huge focal point for the offense when you have Lamar, Henry, Zay. But I just, he's a little cheap, about a 15% chance of being optimal. Like this goes back to basically what I was saying about Bateman. 15% chance of being optimal, so not super likely to succeed, not very different than 11 to 12% on Bateman, but 11% ownership to Bateman, 5% to Hopkins. It's just going to be a spot that's really volatile based on ownership. If we get, as we get the lock and ownership is updated, if Hopkins comes up to 10, 11, 12%, then I lose some Hopkins. I probably get some more Bateman. It's really, I think, going to have a lot to do with how those two work together, right? Like how the ownership compares to each other.
Yeah. In 4 games with Lamar Jackson, just 32% route participation. So that's actually come up. The route participation for DeAndre Hopkins, and the coaches kind of made it sound like they wanted to get him more involved, and just 7 targets in those 4 games, but he scored 2 touchdowns. Man, he was looking pretty good in his limited snaps early. Now the route participation has come up, so you can kind of make a pretty good bull case for DeAndre Hopkins. Like if he is running more routes here, gets a little bit more involved, start getting 4 targets per game for Lamar Jackson, he might look pretty good here. Still some volatility here, like 24% route participation in week 5, but over 40% the last 2 weeks. I guess that at that price tag looks pretty good, but not like amazing.
Yeah,
I
kind of want to push back on what Steven said. Bateman is definitely a risk, but I want to win, not to like pick at this. It's just the sentiment in general annoys me when people like talk about it that way, because having low owned players does not increase your chances of winning because they're low owned. Like you need them to have a better chance of succeeding than their ownership dictates. Like the raw correlation goes the other way. Like popular players make your lineup more likely to do well because they're the best plays. So like it goes back to there's 2 parts of that equation. There's the ownership, and then there's the how often does this succeed. And I just feel like when people talk about it so much, it's like they just ignore the one part, and they're just like, oh, well, this guy is a real player and he's 8% owned, so I'm likely to win more likely to win by taking this risk. And it's okay, well, what if he's only 5% to succeed? So you just took a risk for no reason. So again, like not to pick on Steven, like he makes a lot of good points. I just like the wording is just like a pet peeve.
You just don't like he's risky and therefore he's a good play, where it's like,
yeah, like, because I mean that's how everybody talked about DFS like for a long time.
Yeah.
But like there's a second part of that equation.
Yeah, I feel like that's like the Jameson Williams is frequently like the one that I think like people love these, like he's boom bust, and it's really just like he has splash plays. Like I don't know. It's yeah.
I think you called me out on that specifically. Because I do the same thing. Like in my head, and I think I think I won like a two game slate with last year where like Jameson Williams had a big game. So I think like that sticks in my head too, where like in my head, Jameson Williams either scores like 5 points or 30 points, but really he scores like 5 points or like 18 points.
Right. Most of the time. Yeah. He's not quite the big spike week guy that like, and I think that's the case for everybody. It's like we all think, and like obviously he could score like 35 points in a game if he just has like multiple of those splash plays.
Steven said I'll have good lineups, but if he's 0% a captain, I'll put him at captain 4%. Yeah, like that makes perfect sense. And again, like I wasn't trying to pick on you because I know you say intelligent things. Yeah, and also I will point out with the ownership, like he's not going to be 0%. He'll be 2.
Yeah, he'll definitely get some ownership.
Which, as a broader point, Run the Sims or other sites, whatever, always check that stuff when you are running Sims. The very low owned players are going to be very, very sensitive. So, like, if you are using whatever site you use and you build lineups and you're getting, just to use Bateman as an example, 15% at captain, look at what his actual ownership projection is. If it's 1%, make it 3% and then see what you get, because that's that range of ownership is going to be super sensitive.
That's a good point. Yeah. It's always important to double check that stuff. Yeah, and I think like Run the Sims, you often have the people who provide your ownership will often have a lot of players with like 0% at captain, where it's like, I mean, it's not going to be
We're
zero.
working on
And
that. We are
yeah,
working
okay,
on
all right, that's good to know. But yeah, those are always things to pay attention to with the Sims. Are you getting
Yeah,
to
it doesn't
any?
matter if somebody is projected for 48% ownership and they're actually 51. It
Right.
matters a lot if it's 1 and 4.
Yeah, exactly. Getting to any Tez Walker, Tylen Wallace?
I am not.
Me neither.
I don't want to say too much about it though, because we'll get the Tylen Wallace game.
Yeah, I mean, that happened on a Showdown slate last year when I was like, yeah, you don't need to think about Tylen Wallace. Like, he's run 6 routes the entire season. And then it was just like, he had like, I think he had multiple touchdowns that game, or I know he had one that was like 70 yards, but I think he had more than that also. Yeah. So
I assume it's just because like you're hyper focused on like island games, but and like you don't notice all the times that random shit, happens in a 1 o'clock game. But like, it seems like coaches go into island games just like intentionally scheming up like the most random shit that they can possibly do.
Who's the tight end who literally always gets targeted? There's some tight end. I can't think of who it is.
I mean, Noah Gray until this year.
Noah Gray is definitely one of them. But there's one who like literally runs 1 route per game. And I swear to God, every single Showdown slate, I'm like, yeah, he's not a great play. Like, people want to play him for some reason.
Connor Hayward.
Connor Hayward. It is Connor Hayward. Yes. And he's just like every Showdown slate, he gets at least 1 end zone target. Yep. And it's just like, come on, what is going on here? Like, he's been targeted once the entire season. Now, yeah, it's anyway. We haven't talked about the Dolphin side yet. Jalen Waddle, man, pretty good role without Tyreek Hill. I'm going to pull up his stats, or pull up the Dolphin stats for the last 4 games without Tyreek Hill. But Jalen Waddle, 10,400 projected for 32% flex, 6% ownership. Okay, here's the other place that all of my exposure is going. 37% flex, 39% captain Jalen Waddle right now. Are you seeing something similar?
Yeah, same thing. Him and Tua are the two that I think are going to come down the most between now and lock, and as a result, you'll just see more of the other guys that you want to get to. When I first looked at my Waddle exposures, I saw 36% at flex, and I was like, "Oh, cool! I'm actually not jamming him." And then I saw 36% at captain. His receiving prop right now is like 65 yards. His projection right now is like 80. I think it's coming out even a little bit higher than that in the sim. So that's one where like the baseline on Miami passing right now is like a pass attempt or 2 higher than market, which I don't hate. Like, they are an offense that will throw. There's a decent chance they're going to be forced to throw, etc. But they're also an offense where like they're tricky to project, because a lot of times, like I don't actually have the data to back this up, but like I think you kind of can just tell from paying attention to Miami. Like, there's probably, I would guess that there's a bigger correlation between like Miami pass attempts on the top end and Miami being absolutely fucking awful than like other teams. Like, Miami is just so prone to, if Tua throws it 32 times, Tua's playing well. If Tua throws it 36 times, everybody has 12 yards.
Huh. Interesting.
Like you know what I'm getting at though, where it's just like Tua's baseline isn't bad. Jalen Waddle is good, but like their bad games are so frequent and so bad when they happen.
Yeah, no, that is true. I'm going to fess up. I was not listening to that whole thing, and
I could. Yeah, I could tell by your reaction. Like, I was like, okay, either I said something that like, I was like, okay, either Neil disagrees that Miami had some really bad games a lot of the time, or he was not listening.
I was definitely not listening at all. I got like an alert in my ear, and then I went to check what the alert was, and I was reading as you were talking, and then I came back and I was like, wait, I was like, this was actually something I meant to listen to, and then I just completely got distracted. I need ADHD medications, clearly. Yeah, I did not hear what you said, but I'm sure it was smart. I hope everybody learned something from what Adam just said about.
I basically said that Miami is tough to project because
okay,
their baseline talent level is higher than their frequent performance.
Okay, yes, I think I agree with that. So you think that you want less then, because a lot of time they are gonna fail. Like this is, you get them in the Sims because so frequently they also have these big spike weeks.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those spots where, like I've said it before, I don't generally like manually manipulate my player exposures, but like when I see something like Jalen Waddle, I'm going to go back and just double check inputs. And in this case, right now, the baseline receiving projection on Jalen Waddle is like 15 yards above prop market, which again, like I don't think prop market is gospel. It's beatable with good projections, clearly. So like I'm going to at least look at that, and then in this case, probably end up, because I know the range of outcomes here is so stupid. Probably will end up, again, losing a point off of Waddle, losing a point off of Tua, something like that. So, like, still a good play. Like, he's clearly the wide receiver one here. He's a talented receiver. His quarterback sometimes is good and sometimes looks like he's never played football before. No idea which one you're going to get. But, like, clearly the ceiling is massive for Jalen Waddle, but the floor is also, like, 0.
Yeah. And Walt says, this is something I meant to be listening to, as opposed to most of the rest of what Adam says.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of what Adam says and a lot of what I say is like, he already knows what I'm saying. I already know what he's saying, but this is something he was making a new point, and like, started it, like, led the discussion in, like, sounded like he was making a new point, which I usually do try to listen if I think he's going to say something that we don't say on every show, or like that is not like, yeah, this player gets a lot of usage, like stuff that I already know. Like if it's like, I love like game theory discussions or things where it's like, this is where it's difficult to project. So I did mean to listen to that one. Whereas I don't need to hear Adam talk about like, yeah, Jalen Waddle gets a lot of usage. That's like, I know that. Yeah, I don't know. So yes, there are some things that I'm like, I can pretty easily tune this out and do other stuff. But that one, no, that was
basically with Waddle. Just like I think about it, where like, okay, his prop line is 65. His like realistic range is probably something from like, 40 to 80, whereas like 40 to 90.
Yeah.
Obviously with like tails on either end still, but like for most guys, where if their prop line is 65, like you're expecting 58 to 72 or something.
Right. Yeah, he's I would imagine he's difficult to project. So probably going to move down the Waddle exposure here. Malik Washington, number 2 receiver since Tyreek Hill has been out. 4,800 projected for 40% flex ownership, 3% captain ownership. So this is kind of the mid range. Like we're starting to see some of the like sort of mid range, depending on what you consider mid range. I don't know if you consider 4,800 part of that, but I only got to 23% Malik Washington, 1% at captain. How much did you get to of Malik Washington?
Yeah, 23 and 1, same as you. I'm a little surprised that like 40% ownership seems like a lot, but like he's clearly a good play. 28% chance of being optimal at flex, 3% at captain. So I think like right now projected to go a little bit over owned, but like again, some of that I would guess turns into DeAndre Hopkins. I think that there's clearly going to be a relationship in how much I play between Malik Washington at 4,800, Hopkins at 4,200, Bateman at 6,400. Where right now the ownership projection on Hopkins is like 1/3 of his optimal rate, and the ownership projection on Bateman is in line with his optimal rate. The ownership projection on Washington is higher than his optimal rate. Clearly, I'm just going to end up with more lineups that have the guy that's rostered 1/3 of the time that he's optimal. But also by lock, that 5% on Hopkins probably is 10% or 11%,
right?
And Washington is 31 instead of 40 or something, and
Right.
then I get more Washington, I get a little bit more Bateman, and I get less Hopkins.
Yep. It's all going to be very sensitive to the ownership inputs. That's another one that I'm curious where other places have it. Because it does seem like, and I have not paid attention to like the, how, which is correct more often, but it seems like the ownership differences, particularly between Run the Sims and Roto-Branders, are so far off so frequently. So it's like, I always come in again with certain opinions on the slate, and then I start using these ownership, and I'm like trying to like make a case for a player being like a great contrarian play, and it's like, but actually you have them at 30% ownership instead of 12, so it makes a huge difference. Yeah, they have Malik Washington at 25.5% projected ownership instead of 40.
Yeah,
Which looks
and
better,
ours,
honestly.
like with the way things look right now, ours will pretty much definitely come down, since
Okay, yeah,
I know how they get adjusted.
you're hot on everything Miami right now, so yeah.
Which again, like the ownership right now isn't even us, but
Right.
yeah.
Nice matchup for Miami receivers against Baltimore. 7th best over the past 5 weeks in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed. What do you say?
I said maybe.
But yeah, but then obviously the defensive players coming back. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, to add that to the volatility, like,
Yeah,
we
right.
don't even know if they're facing a good defense or not.
Yep. Yeah, lot can. I mean, this is a tough one to project with Miami. Beyond Malik Washington, you've got Nick Westbrook-Akine, only 3,200. I'm surprised I'm not getting more. Using this 22% flex ownership number on a slate without much value, I still only got to 4% in the flex, 1% captain Nick Westbrook-Akine. He's one that like last year was just like scoring touchdowns at will. It seems like for a while for Tennessee. His role since Tyreek Hill went down in 4 games. Okay, this is why only 8 targets in those 4 games. 55% route participation though. How much you get into of Nick Westbrook-Akine?
Yeah, I have like 20. No, sorry, I have 5%. He's projected for 22%. I have 5.
Right.
It's just another example. I mean, I guess you can throw him in that same bucket we were just talking about, but 14% chance of being optimal, like that's relatively high. It's not nothing. He's a perfectly fine play, but right now he's just projected to be over-owned, and I can get to some under-owned spots. One thing that is interesting with him, and it is a small sample since, obviously he hasn't had a huge role for, until Hill got out, till Hill got hurt. And then also he's not getting targets either, but his yards per reception and his ADOT are both much lower than they were with Tennessee. So he is somebody where like, maybe it changes, maybe it changes, but it is still a small sample size. But like, when I think of him in Tennessee, I just think of like this big touchdown guy, like use him in the red zone, but also, kind of just like big play guy. That hasn't been how he's utilized at all. Like I think his ADOT right now is like 5.5 yards. I think he's averaging like 7 or 8 yards per reception. So, again, the guy has like 8 catches or something this year, like 1 or 2 plays change that quickly. But so far, and you also have a noodle arm quarterback. Like that's the other thing here is like, Tua's not exactly I'm just going to throw it 70 yards and you can go get it guy.
Right.
So like, I think that there is probably some signal to like, oh yeah, they're not going to do that. So yeah, I think, he is still fine. He's cheap, but like, I do think having different expectations for him relative to what he was doing in Tennessee makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And then also, so D Eskridge, $200 projected for 10% flex ownership. With that number, I got to 34% flex, 3% captain. That's obviously a bit much. But looking at the route, I'm curious what the route share had looked like, because last week he obviously was injured.
Yeah, so D Eskridge is definitely a spot where if you want D Eskridge, you can justify increasing his route share. If you don't want him, you can absolutely justify decreasing it. Do you know what week Tyreek Hill got hurt?
Week 4.
So the first game he didn't play was week 5?
Yep.
Okay, so week 5, 3% route participation for Eskridge. Week 6, 19%. Week 7, 32%. Week 8 gets hurt first play of the game.
Right.
So, but also Cedric Wilson not there, and then week 8 is there.
Right.
Runs 29% of routes. So is D Eskridge emerging as the wide receiver 4 behind Waddle, Washington, and Westbrook-Akine? Is he about to become the wide receiver 5 behind Cedric Wilson? Is he going to jump Westbrook-Akine? I mean, like that, I guess is possible. Like there's a really wide range here. Right now, I have him and Wilson both projected to combine for like 40% of routes. So like 25 to Eskridge, 15 to Wilson. As a result, I'm getting to both of them. It's a really interesting spot because I have no confidence in my ability to guess like which one I want. But I do feel relatively confident that at least one of them is out there running enough routes that at 10% or less ownership and sub 1K on this slate, I want them. So, again, not even that doesn't mean they're going to produce, but like one of these guys is the wide receiver 4.
Right.
At sub 1K.
Which is worth something. Wide receiver 4s mix in.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a wide receiver 4 where like the wide receiver 2 and the wide receiver 3 are running 65% of routes.
Right.
It's not one of those teams where the top 3 wide receivers run 90% of routes.
Right. I just pulled up to look at like to try to figure something out based on the quarters, and I don't know exactly when Eskridge was hurt, so I don't know like it was the first play of the game. Okay.
Yeah.
So this doesn't really tell us anything. Cedric Wilson ran 1 route in the first quarter, 3 in the third quarter. Yeah, no real read. I would think Cedric Wilson would play ahead of D. Eskridge, but that's just guessing. I mean, it's just like because he's had more of a role historically in the NFL. Yeah, it's a tough one to guess. I don't think that I want to have. I don't think I want to make or break my slate on D. Eskridge or Cedric Wilson, so I'm probably just going to try to play it close to the field. I think
I'm hoping
like
one of them is inactive, but
that would be helpful if one was
yeah,
inactive.
but like last week they weren't, so
yeah. Maybe slightly above the field if they're going to be, but actually right now they're not projected to be super low owned. It's 10% Eskridge, 5% Wilson, a little bit low. I guess I would want to be above that number probably. Yeah, it's a tough spot. We'll see where ownership shakes out.
Yeah.
Hopefully one's inactive. I can look at that again tonight a bit, but yeah, I don't have any real takes here.
Yeah, and I will say from like a projection standpoint, I do feel a little bit better about the way, because like I keep looking at it like, well, I don't want a lot of D. Eskridge, but also like I don't really have a strong reason to walk back 25%. And if I do, I need to give it to Cedric Wilson. I don't want a lot of him either. But like we do have a 9.5% optimal rate at flex on Eskridge, and he is projected for 10% ownership. And then same for Cedric Wilson, it's like 5 and 5. So like I don't think the projections are necessarily really off. I think it's just the sim really preferring to get to stars and scrubs lineups.
Yeah, I think that is probably accurate. Anything else on receivers here?
Just definitely pay attention to whether both of those guys are active or not.
Yeah. All right, tight ends on the Ravens side: Mark Andrews 5,000, Isaiah Likely 2,000.
Sorry, I just thought about it because you said that. Also, speaking about wide receiver 4 on Miami, no Darren Waller does make that a more valuable role. There's more wide receiver routes.
Good point.
Especially given that last week, their tight ends combined for like 65% route participation. Like,
right.
They just didn't use tight ends.
Right. Yeah. It helps a bit with the wide. Theoretically, the wide receiver 3, 4, 5. Yeah, they all should benefit some.
Yeah, like on some teams, you would see Waller's injury mean that like Washington and Westbrook get up to 85%, but like that's not to say they won't this game, but that's not what Miami did, and they've not really done that all year.
They're just running a gross rotation, just like the running back. They're just trying to make it as gross as possible for DFS. All right, tight ends again, 5,000 for Andrews, 2,000 for Likely. Isaiah Likely has not played much with Lamar so far, or like healthy with Lamar, I guess, so far this year. Let me fact check myself on that. I feel like he missed at least the first couple of games, right? Yeah. So we haven't really seen them together. Yeah, Isaiah Likely came back in week 4, which is the week that Lamar got hurt, ran 47.5% route participation, then 43%, 80% in week 6, back down to 56% in week 8. He's just 2,000 for a guy who had his games last year. And then Mark Andrews has played every game this year. We can look at what he did with Lamar, but we again don't have much of a sample of Mark Andrews active and Isaiah Likely active with Lamar. So this is kind of a new thing for this year. But Isaiah Likely just looks too cheap at 2,000. Mark Andrews looks fair at 5,000 to me. Andrews getting a fair amount of ownership, 36 flex, 2% captain. With those numbers, I got to 11% flex, 3% captain. Likely project for 28% flex, 1% captain. With those numbers, I got to 16 flex, 1 captain. What are you doing with the Ravens tight ends?
So I have 11 flex, 4 captain on Andrews, and then 21 flex and 1 captain on Likely. I don't mind either of those numbers. If I had to change one, I think it would be playing more Likely than I have right now, because he is really cheap, and I would not mind at all if I can turn some of that like D. Eskridge, for example, into Isaiah Likely for $1,200 more, I think. Or no, I guess it's $1,800 more in that case, but still, if I can make that work. Like the last 2 weeks, Likely has actually run, or last 2 games has actually run slightly more routes than Mark Andrews, 85% to 73% using the PFF numbers in week 6, 60 to 56 in week 8. So very similar. They're not splitting because they're running more than 100%, but like they're both out there. But we've seen Likely very involved. This hasn't been like Likely comes back from injury, Mark Andrews keeps this lock on tight end 1, and Isaiah Likely is running 35-40% of routes. He's running routes like he's a lot of teams tight end 1 in terms of participation. In the 3 weeks that Likely was out, Andrews was 73, 79, 73%. Since then, the 4 weeks that Likely's been back, Andrews' high mark is 73%. He has 2 games below 60%. So you've seen, again, not that his role disappeared, but you've seen a drop off for Andrews. You've seen Likely be very heavily involved. And so like Andrews is at that price point, kind of like Bateman, I think, at 5K, where like you don't really love it at his median projection. Clearly, if he goes and scores a touchdown, like he's capable of having a big game at 5K, but there is going to be ownership there as well. Likely has a very similar role to Andrews, is $3,000 less. If I could change, or if I were to change my exposures on one of these guys, I think it's probably just getting to more Isaiah Likely.
Yeah, I think the $2,000 price tag for Isaiah Likely just very appealing for a guy who's running as many routes as he is. I did just pull up his last year fantasy points last year, and I was just trying to like how many of these games would you want at 2,000? Obviously, week 1, 26, 16 in week 5. You might want 8.7 in week 8, 10 in week 11. Like he had several games that would have pretty easily paid off this $2,000 price tag, and then several, a few more that would probably be fine at $2,000. So yeah, he looks like a really strong bet at $2,000, obviously somewhat contingent on ownership. Again, the ownership numbers here higher than I've seen elsewhere on Isaiah Likely. So he's looked like kind of a smash, but even
one
at
thing
these
that I think
ownership
is
numbers,
interesting too, and I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, so I thought you were done talking. But it was just like the stream skipping, I think.
oh,
So one thing I was going to mention with Likely is I'm waiting for last year's numbers to load, but I think that there is, and like probably guilty in our baseline projections as well, probably a tendency for him to be a little bit under projected here because his targets per route run this season is like 0.07 targets per route run. If you look at like his productivity this year, it sucks, but he hasn't played a full game with Lamar, like you said. When 3 of the 4 games you've played are with Cooper Rush or Tyler Huntley, like, yeah, those guys are playing completely differently than Lamar does. Last year, 0.22 targets per route run for Isaiah Likely. It's not like this is just one of those, tight ends out there running routes and not really doing much. Like he's a pass catching tight end that now has his quarterback back. I think that, obviously like 4 games isn't adjusting anybody's baseline that much. So like anywhere with good projections is still going to be projecting Likely pretty well. But like, I really think you can kind of throw out what he has or hasn't done so far this year.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that like, again, he looks really good for 2,000. It's all going to come down to ownership. Like if he ends up, I'm sort of surprised that he's not getting 40% ownership, which I think is, to your point, is because the projections are a little bit low. I'm also surprised, and this is, as you said, maybe your projections are a little bit light right now, because when I see 28% flex, 1% captain, I'm like, man, that looks like a smash for Isaiah Likely, and that is not what the Sims are giving me. But that's also based on inputs that have not been honed in necessarily right now. So maybe if you increase his market share a little bit, he'll look better with Lamar.
It probably actually sets up. Sorry, probably actually my streams keeps cutting in and out, so I keep hearing like you stop talking and I start. It probably actually, I haven't looked really at his like at his props, but like it probably sets up a pretty interesting like laddering spot too. If you just think that there's a chance that he's getting targeted at 3 times the frequency today that he has this season.
I wonder if I'm cutting out for other people. It might be my internet. I'm not sure. Hopefully it does not continue to cut out though. Against any Charlie Kolar at 1,600, I didn't get to any with projection 2.4% flex.
No, I didn't. He did actually run a good amount of routes last week too. He was at 28%, while Likely and Andrews were at 55 to 60. So like he is still out there running routes. Obviously you expect him to run fewer routes with Likely than without him. He's run 8, 29, 15, and 28 in the 4 games that Likely's been there. So like he is out there enough that he can be that random annoying tight end today. But also like I would rather throw those darts at the wide receiver 4, whoever that may be on Miami. I'd probably rather throw them at the tight end on Miami, on Dulcich. So like, yeah.
I just want to read off chat real quick. First of all, Ryan says, haven't made an Adam internet joke in a long time. Neil's fine on my end. Audio fine on you. It sounds like Adam's just lying. Probably Adam's just lying to me about.
So what's actually happening is I'm not listening, and then I think of something to say, and I'm just going.
He interrupts, and then he makes an excuse for why he interrupted me. Oh, I couldn't hear you. You cut out. Yeah, exactly.
I actually have my computer muted right now.
Adam hasn't heard a word I've said the entire show. Wouldn't
I'm
be
just
that
watching.
shocking.
I'm just watching, and whenever your mouth stops moving, I just talk.
Yeah, I believe it, honestly. All right, so we've I think they look like Ravens tight ends look pretty good. Isaiah Likely looks to me like a smash. Sounds like you kind of agree with that. Also, Charlie Collard seems like like as far as like backup tight ends go, I think I want more than 2.4%. Even as you said, like I'd rather give it to some of the other options on the slate. Like that seems, I don't know. I guess that seems about right. 2.4 because he's 1,600. We do have some like decent value on the slate. We'll get to the Miami tight ends, also pretty interesting to me. Andrews looks fine. Okay, let's talk about the Miami tight ends.
So with Kolar too, like it's also ownership dependent. Also, like not that I'm getting a ton of likely right now, but if I look at what I'm getting at 20% likely and 0% Kolar, my bigger priority is to get more likely. It's not to start figuring out how to get $1,600 Kolar. It's to figure out how the hell to get more $2,000 likely.
Yeah. Agree with that. Miami side, interesting because we only have a 1-game sample of Greg Dulcich and Tanner Connor both being active for the Dolphins and no Darren Waller. That was last week was the 1 game of that. If you look at the route participation week over week, it was, I mean, Tanner Connor had his opportunities with Darren Waller out early in the year, ran over 50% of the routes, and then Waller came back and they were like, we're good, we don't need you. With Waller out last game, 28.6% route participation for Tanner Connor, 25% for Greg Dulcich. And then looking at the splits of like when they were running their routes in the first quarter last week, Greg Dulcich ran 3 routes to none for Tanner Connor. And this game ended up being a blowout. Second quarter, 2 apiece. Third quarter, we did have, let's see, Tanner Connor 3, Dulcich 4. No, that's the fourth quarter. Dulcich didn't run a route in the third quarter. That's kind of interesting. And then fourth quarter, Tanner Connor ran 2, Dulcich ran 1. So I don't know. I think it looks good. The first quarter route participation for Greg Dulcich, I guess my point is he looks pretty good to me, given 60% route participation in the first quarter. I don't want to read too much into that, but like ultimately they both ran a quarter of the routes essentially. And Dulcich, I think, is probably a better pass catcher than Tanner Connor. Do you have any takes on Dulcich versus Connor?
Yeah, so I think that at worst, Dulcich looks like a pretty solid play at $600. Like he ran 35% of routes last week, and just that in a vacuum would make someone viable at $600. You could make the bull case too that like Dulcich is new to Miami and his role could just expand. If you follow any best ball bros on Twitter, you've been under the impression for 3 years that Greg Dulcich is like the next coming of
Alberto
like or something. So, yeah, like maybe he goes out and runs 60%. He is projected for ownership right now at 18%, which is why I only have like 5 to 10%. But he is somebody that like I probably should like his route participation probably should be projected a little bit higher than just like assuming they mimic what they did last week, since it is that type of situation where like they just had an injury at tight end. They saw Gordon earlier in the year. Clearly, they weren't super impressed because they went out and they signed Dulcich and immediately threw him into a role equal to Gordon. It wouldn't be surprising at all if we saw with Waller. Not to say Dulcich is going to do what Waller did, but like when Waller came back from injury, it was like I don't remember 40%, 60%, 70% route participation, like this massive jump. It's completely conceivable that last week was just all right, go get your feet wet. Like 6 plays in the playbook, go run them. And then this week it's like, okay, now 15 plays, go run 50% of routes. Like entirely possible that happens.
100%. Yeah. You and I are on the same page. I wrote up Dulcich as like the player I expect to be most over the field on. However, again, I was using RotoGrinders 5% projected flex ownership for Dulcich, 18% less appealing. I still think I'll probably be over that number, but like not as much as like if he was going to be 5%, I was like, I might just like jam this, like have like 40% of Dulcich if he's going to be that low. And at 18%, he's like, yeah, still appealing because like you say, like 25% feels like it's probably the baseline. And there's a good chance that he does expand his role as he is with the team longer. And he's only 600, and like there's just a lot to like about Greg Dulcich here. Just the potential of the role expanding. There's volatility in that. Like maybe they didn't like what they saw, as Ryan says, as a Denver fan. I think I'll pass on Dulcich. I mean, he had his he had his moments. I don't even know if he had his games, but he had his moments where he looked really good on
I think he
Denver,
had
I
one
thought.
game, and I think, of course, it was an island game.
Yeah, I think that sounds right. Like I can picture some plays of Greg Dulcich being like, that guy looks really good briefly.
I can specifically remember the feeling of, because like, as I think everybody knows, I very much enjoy it when all the best ball bros just like eat shit on a player that they all love. But I can remember the feeling of like, not only am I annoyed because people are finally getting their Dulcich game, but I'm really annoyed because it fucking matters like in this
Yeah,
game.
it's happening. It's
For
happening on
like
Showdown.
for my money, this matters.
Yeah. Yeah. So he at least had a game. He's 600. Like the price is just really nice on Dulcich. And the ownership, I think usually the ownership comes in somewhere between what Run the Sims has and what Roto Runners has is like
Yeah, I mean,
generally
I'm
can
a
expect.
pretty big proponent of aggregating ownership, much
Yeah.
more so than like actual projections.
Yeah. I think that makes sense to aggregate the ownership there. Um, Yeah, so Dulcich I think looks looks really good here. Tanner Connor fine at 2,800 again ran. I mean he ran like just as many routes as Charlie Kolar last week. He actually saw targets, whereas Dulcich was not targeted in that game.
That ownership cannot be right. Like Gordon cannot be half the ownership, or even a third the ownership of Isaiah Likely at $800 more.
Wait,
Or, I
Gordon?
mean Connor.
Oh, Connor. Yeah,
I think I've called him Gordon like 6 times, but
I
yeah,
think you
Connor.
have two, and I think I've been confused every time. Wait,
Yeah,
Connor 10% flex. Well, you think that he cannot be? What are you saying is wrong?
Connor's gonna be like 4%,
Okay.
and Likely's gonna be like 40.
Okay. Yes. I think that sounds more plausible. I assumed that was you were saying like it was going to move in that direction. I mean, Connor might stay at close to 10% just because he
I
is
mean, yeah,
nominally
I
the starting
guess.
tight end. But I like yes, I think that the gap will be a lot bigger than it is right here. Yeah, so it'll probably move a little bit lower for Connor, higher for Likely. Um,
Then again,
what
I
do you
say
think?
that, but like if you look at the optimal rate, it's 3-1 Likely, which is
Oh,
exactly
really?
what ownership is
Well, that's
showing.
also because you have kind of it seems like
That's
you're
true. Yeah, yeah.
light
I
on it.
was gonna say with Likely, like as we've been talking, I've been kind of just like going back and looking at some stuff. The chances of Likely naturally being under projected here are actually, like, just in general, I think are actually relatively high because like I had said, it's only 4 games, so like it probably isn't having that much of an impact. But he's been running so many routes, like he's already run like 308 routes this year. So if any model that is like using routes as the decision point of like how much are we waiting this year, how much are we waiting last year, Likely's actually run a ton of routes.
Right. They're just not with Lamar Jackson. So
Right.
yeah, so he's pretty likely to be under projected.
Yeah, and I think
Um,
308 was high, but like whatever, he's run a lot.
oh, is this what's happened? Tanner Gordon is a Rockies pitcher. Is that why you calling him Gordon?
That might be it.
Okay, that would make a lot of sense. As somebody who doesn't know who Tanner Gordon is, I was like, how are you confusing him with Ollie Gordon? Like I was
Yeah,
so
no,
like,
I definitely
what is
wasn't
going
confusing
on?
with Ollie Gordon.
Okay, good. Glad we figured that out.
It probably was though that like the name Gordon was on my mind because I said it 10 times earlier, and
Yeah,
then I'm thinking Tanner, and it's just coming out Gordon.
yeah, I get it. Anything else on tight ends?
No.
All right, defenses, kickers, we'll just do them all together. Ravens projected for 14% flex ownership, none at captain. I got to 25% flex, 3 at captain. Tyler Loop projected for 25% flex, 1 at captain. I got to 7 at flex. Dolphins 3,400 projected for 3% flex ownership. I got to 25%. Riley Patterson 5,200 projected for 24% flex, 1% captain. I got to just 3% flex. So not a lot of the kickers here. This is what surprised me. I'm getting to a lot of the defenses, not much of the kickers. Do you have any takes here?
So I've said a few times that there's exposures I want to change, but I might walk that back because I don't have kickers. I'm not jamming a kicker for the first fucking time this year. Yeah, no, it's the same as you. It's even exposures basically to the defenses, which I guess is fine. Like obviously I'd rather have the Ravens, but they're also going to be more popular. It's not a secret that people are going to prefer to click the defense against Tua instead of the defense against Lamar. But that's fine. If I get the kickers, I get the kickers. But like there are enough cheap pieces. This is kind of you and I were talking about best ball tight end strategy in DMs the other day. This to me kind of has to do with like I was saying that I'm somebody that always like I never really buy into the like elite tight end strategy because there's literally like 2 guys in the entire bucket, and if they just anything happens to make them not be great, the entire strategy fails. It's kind of the inverse on this slate, I think, where like there's not other than like Isaiah Likely at 2K, who I like. There's not like a cheap guy that I'm looking at and going like, I'm really confident this guy has a good game. And I'm not even saying I'm confident Likely has a good game,
Right.
but like there's not one guy I'm looking at and saying like they look really good. But there's this entire bucket of Isaiah Likely, like when you think of like kicker pricing and cheaper, Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews, Greg Dulcich, wide receiver 4/5 on the Dolphins, Malik Washington, Westbrook Akine, Hopkins. Like there's this massive bucket of dudes that can outscore a kicker, and somebody's probably gonna do it. Like a couple of guys are probably gonna do it.
Yeah, it's probably safer than usual to fade kickers on.
Like I would rather just be mixing and matching that group of guys where I'm just like, yeah, I don't really like them, but they're cheap and they play wide receiver, probably, than playing the 25% on kickers here.
Yeah, because the kickers are getting so much ownership is what it comes down to. Yeah, I think that makes sense. All right, I think we've had all of the conversation. Do you have any other notes on this game?
Yeah, I want to retract my 308 routes for Isaiah Likely. He ran 308 routes last year. I was looking at the wrong page.
Okay.
But the point stands. Like he's run a lot of routes. So anybody that is weighting this year by routes and not by games actually is going to have a pretty healthy like number on Isaiah Likely.
Okay.
Getting 0 targets basically.
Pepper Tony says Keaton again might be inactive. Just so keep your eye out for whether Keaton Mitchell is active.
That's one of those, it's like a 7 p.m. NBA game. People are like, oh, do you think this guy's gonna be active? It's like, I don't fucking care. I'll find out. Yeah. So, but I will, because I do think it's a little more important than like usual. When you talk about like a running back 30. So I will reiterate it. Like if Keaton is active, I think you take a little bit. So like right now, the baseline projection for Keaton on the Run the Sim site is 2%. I think that's wrong. It's just a matter of which direction is it wrong. Right. I put him in basically just for logistics reasons and to save a headache later. But if he's out, obviously it's 0%. If he's active, I think it becomes like, I don't know, 6%, 7%. And you take like 2 or 3% from Hill. You take like 2 or 3% from Lamar.
Yep. Makes sense. He is on my one remaining eliminator team. So hoping that Keaton Mitchell busts off an 80-yard touchdown tonight. Hopefully he is actually active. We'll see.
And I do think if he's active, it's not like a glaring red flag, like don't play Lamar type thing.
Right.
But I think it would increase the likelihood that you see 1 or 2 less designed runs for Lamar coming off injury.
I just want to note, Pepper Tony says strategy, never draft early tight end ever again. At the exact same time that he posted that, I get a Pete Overs at YouTube pop-up that says done with elite tight end forever. So apparently that is a strong sentiment right now.
Using that word again as if I've ever done it to start with.
I mean, yeah, I drafted I think 26 shares of Brock Bowers in Best Ball Mania this year. Does not feel good, but he got hurt in week 1. He had 100 yards. He got hurt in the third quarter of week 1.
Yeah, I mean, most of the guys around him, I feel like haven't been that great, but like also Achane was there, Taylor. And so is Taylor.
Yeah. I mean, I drafted him over Jonathan Taylor every chance I had. Yeah. So yeah, it's not working so well.
Yeah, I mean that's like I was thinking about it with McBride. I'm like, yeah, I have McBride, but I could have had a lot more. But unfortunately, I was like jamming T. Higgins over him instead of Jackson Smith and Jigbo over him.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Things not going so well in the early round choices generally Nico Collins should be back this week, so maybe that will work out eventually. Yeah, anyway, we're gonna get out of here. Do you have anything else coming up, anything you want to shout out?
Nope.
Okay.
I guess I'll just tweet it later.
Okay, cool. I'll be back tonight about 85 minutes prior to lock, after inactive 5 to 10 minutes after inactives come out. I'll be doing another show breaking this all down again with a bit more information than I have right now. Hopefully you'll join me for that. If you haven't done so, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and of course, if you have not already checked out Run the Sims, you can use promo code Neil to get 10% off your first payment on any product. There's also a link in the description of this video if you want to find the Run the Sims subscription options. All right, thanks everybody. I'll catch you later.